to
Coco
Caliente. You threw me off on that.
Gotcha.
I was ready to go. I was really ready to go.
You know, you said it so fast. I was like, I gotta go. So today's intro topic
is brought to you by Nicole Franzel.
There's a craft bazaar today, and I'm really excited to go after we get done podcasting.
So the average person, right, that lives, I'd say most people live in cities, right?
Yeah.
So let's say that. So what if they don't know what a craft bazaar is? So what is that?
I think cities have craft bazaars as well, but they're probably just not as homemade. Maybe they are.
What is a craft bazaar?
A craft bazaar is a thing that takes place in like a school around here, like a local school, and all the hallways are filled with goods that you either knit, you craft, you make a wreath, sometimes people sell cookies.
So who's making these things?
Anybody.
So,
I want to eventually have a booth at a craft bazaar. Like, say, you know how our neighbor, she makes the table runners? She, like, sews them. She sells them there.
Oh,
so it's like something, it's a hobby.
That's kind of crazy, though. That you go to a high school, and all the hallways are filled with booths that people are making stuff and selling themselves.
Yeah.
Crafts.
Yeah.
That is interesting.
I love it.
I had never heard of that in my life until I moved here.
Really?
Same with the fact that I now have a bowling ball and bowling shoes in my car, and that everybody here pretty much has their own bowling ball and bowling shoes. And when I said that at work, they were like, "You have your own bowling ball and your own bowling shoes? That's weird." And I was like, No. It's not weird where I live. Because I live in a little village where everybody has that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Just another nuance of living in a small town.
Like, I love craft bazaar so much. You should come.
Nah, I think I'm going to pass on that.
You get to see, so some years it's kind of like, oh, it's the same thing. But once in a while there's like new fads out there. And I don't see them much, and so I'm like, oh, so now this is a thing. And like, I'm always looking for Christmas decorations. But the thing is like, I feel really bad walking by every station and not buying something.
Because it is, yeah, and so,
because it's their hard-earned, like, it's their work, and you feel so sad.
Yeah, and it's not, so they're taking time, and I think about this.
They pay to be there as well.
Yeah, and I think about this when we go to, like, the actual craft shows at, like, a festival or something.
Yeah.
You know, where they have all the tents set up. So these people are at home taking their time to make this. This is not their job. If anything, this is a side gig where they make some extra money on it, right? And so they take their time, they go out and they set up a booth, and a lot of times I'm thinking, how many people actually buy this stuff, right? For them to take their time to make it and then pay to have the booth and then sit out there all day, like, are they really making enough money? Or are they just like so proud of what they made and just one person buying it is like, oh, that's awesome. You know what I mean?
So absolutely. Is it worse or better too? I'm in like a limbo where I don't want to walk by and act like their stuff isn't good. Say, I know I'm not going to buy this product. Especially I don't really buy like the Mary Kay or anything like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm into like the knitted things or whatever. But if I'm not interested, do you walk by and just pretend like, oh, you didn't see it? Or do you like be like, wow, this works beautiful, but then no, you're not buying it. So it's like bad to lead them on and be like, wow, this is nice. Or should you just ignore it? Like, what do you do?
Well, maybe the polite thing to do, you know, just acknowledge and smile and, you know, hey, that is nice, and then keep moving on. There have been times, though, where I think myself and you have bought things that we don't necessarily like, I've bought stuff from like he has like a garden at his house and he made whatever.
Yeah.
And I'll buy it, but I never eat it. You know what I mean? But I think it's like good enough, right? That's like, oh, maybe I could eat it, but I don't really feel like eating it.
Exactly. And I will never go to a craft show and leave empty-handed. Never.
Yeah.
Not even, even if I would never use something, I'm going to walk around with bags in my hand because that's the nature of the game.
And
sometimes you have so much that you do like that you don't know what to buy. I bought those, see where those cute succulent cactus, those jars? I bought that last year there. And
this is why Nicole has a hoarding problem.
I do not have a hoarding problem. We're not going back to episode 1.
Well, I think it's very clear to see that you do, but it's okay.
I do not have a hoarding problem.
Okay, she doesn't have a hoarding problem.
Victor, have you seen the movie Hoarders?
She does have a hoarding problem.
No, I don't.
It's an organized hoarding.
It's not hoarding. You're so annoying. It's not, I swear to you guys, it's not hoarding.
Also, something valuable, this is completely off topic, that I was telling Nicole about earlier today. I was listening to a podcast. It's called Science Versus, I believe is the name of the podcast.
Do we have time for this?
Yes, we do, because I think this is important, right? So we all know that exercising, okay, we have said before that exercising is not the way to lose the most weight, right? It is...
Right, like 80% food or 70% food,
dieting.
30% exercise.
Exactly. So dieting is the way to lose most weight. But exercising in and of itself has a lot of benefits that I just learned scientifically. One, studies have shown that it produces new brain cells, which is kind of crazy, in the hippocampus. And so with that, they had a long-term study that showed that people
That is not how you say that word.
Hippocampus?
It is?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've never pronounced it like that.
Hippocampus? What is it, hippocampus? I thought it was hippocampus.
I don't think there's any HIPAA to it.
Okay. Everybody just wait right here, and we're just going to check this
It's hippopotamus.
Okay.
What's crazy is in nursing school, I had to memorize everything. I know the whole entire anatomy of the body, every freaking medication you could ever imagine. So the teacher never pronounced them for us. We saw them in our textbook or on a test.
You ready?
Yeah.
Hippocampus.
Oh, he's right. Mm-hmm. And so I would say it how I thought it would be said, and then I would hear it in like the hospital. I'm like, wow, that's so embarrassing. But because you do not have time to look up the pronunciation of every single word. So, I mean, my friends would make fun of me, but things click in my brain when I remember weird things like that. Okay, continue.
Yeah, so it showed that those brain cells are being produced, those new ones, in the hippocampus, which another study showed that people that were high fit had a 90% chance of not having dementia if they were high fit. Normal fit, like let's say exercise just regularly, nothing crazy, you were 40% chance of not getting dementia. And same with exercising with cancer, right? People, not only did exercising reduce your chances of getting cancer, but if you had cancer, let's say the test was done on prostate cancer, if you had that and you exercise, you had a 60% chance of not dying because of the cancer, right? The cancer was not the one that was going to kill you because it created these cancer killer cells. Exercising produced more of them, and they infiltrate the cancer cells, and they attack them from within.
And my hypothesis on this is that the reason that you make new brain cells and also it helps your well-being with dementia and getting sick is because I think back in the day our nature would be, okay, this person is like running, trying to catch us food, trying to provide for families, so we need this person to survive in order for other humans to survive. They're taking care and they're providing for. And Vic said that's a really good explanation.
That is a good armchair expert explanation way of thinking about it, I think.
Yeah. Because they're like, sure, we need this person to have brain cells to learn how to catch food that is even more difficult, like animals, and we need them to be faster and stronger.
Yep.
Okay, so for Christmas, I got my mom this beautiful ring. It's 18 karat gold. It says, I love you, Mama. And I got it from Noemi. Noemi believes that luxury jewelry doesn't have to be overpriced because it is very hard to find exactly what you're looking for, that it's genuine, it's like, different, unique, and it's dainty, and it's priced well. So you can save an average of 50% compared to other luxury brands because Noemi cuts out the middleman to deliver exceptional fine jewelry without the traditional retail markups. You can personalize with engravings and even order custom designs, which is really, really cool. I love ordering personalized things. At Noemi, everyone gets the friends and family treatment. So they all get that discount because they can afford to, because they cut out the middleman. You can read the thousands of 5-star reviews if you're debating on whether you want to, order from Noemi or you're looking for someone special. You can return any order for a full refund, even engraving and custom designs. It's literally an entirely risk-free experience. They give you certificates to guarantee authenticity, and you can use flexible payment options if that's something you're interested in too. So if you're looking for jewelry for someone special, go to hellonoemi.com/Coco, COCO, to see their collections and get $50 off your first purchase with promo code COCO, COCO. Just go to Hello, HELLO, Noemi, NOEMIE.com/COCO. And don't forget to use the promo code COCO, COCO, for $50 off your first purchase.
All right, so switching gears.
So our guest today, so I had read a book maybe like a month and a half ago called Tears of the Silenced by Misty Griffin. She was someone who was born into kind of like an abusive atmosphere, and she got kind of pushed into being Amish. I mean, being Amish was a way out for her, and she ended up breaking free from the Amish because of, she'll share her story with you. It was just very touching in a way of like how she didn't give up, how she constantly fought, even though police authorities told her over and over again there was nothing they could do. I think that sharing her story is really important, so that way people do open their eyes and they do know the truth about if someone comes to you saying they're being abused, you need to absolutely believe them. This didn't happen that long ago.
Or at least figure it out, right?
Yeah,
Search
don't just
and investigate.
say, she got hearing Amish. No, the Amish don't do stuff like that. The Amish are good people. And you know that the manipulators, they're really good at putting on that face of everything's perfect. So that's every single time that she told, I need help, they would all put on that face of, no, everything's great. She's just upset. She's rebelling. Yeah. And she went through it for years and years and years.
So, yeah, we're going to talk to her and about her story. Very compelling stuff. And I just want to give you guys a warning, heads up, that there may be some adult undertones in this conversation. So just be aware of that.
Hi, Misty.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining with us today. We really appreciate it. And
Sure, of course.
yeah, so I read your book, and it was just like, I was just like, oh my gosh, Victor, we have to try to get her on the podcast because your story is just
so compelling.
Yes, and I feel like the world needs to hear it, and so that way this doesn't happen to
anybody else ever,
right.
Hopefully.
Yeah, that's why I wrote it.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself right now, what you're doing and the things that you're working on.
Well, actually, right now I have some exciting news. Well, I just graduated nursing school at the end of June.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And then after that, like in September, I met with a producer and a director, and now we're underway to make a TV series out of my book. So, that's pretty exciting.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that is really. Do you have a name for the series yet?
As far as I know, it's going to be called Tears of the Silence, just like the book. It's supposed to be 2 seasons. So, yeah, 2 seasons.
And are you going to help?
I'm gonna,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, yeah. Yeah, I'm going to be the scriptwriter and consulting producer on the series.
Hey, that's
but right
amazing.
now we're just in the funding process, but we have a lot of interest. So
yeah, no, for sure.
That is amazing. I'm really happy for you. That's if anybody deserves that, it's you. You know, and then that what a way to gain awareness, right?
It was unexpected, but yeah, I'm very excited about it.
So, Misty, tell us, you know, for the listeners that don't know you or don't know your story, let's just go back to the beginning, you know. Tell us about your childhood and growing up.
Okay, so, yeah, kind of a crazy story, how it happened, I guess, but, yeah, when I was about 4 years old, my mom met my stepfather, and that's kind of when my story starts. Like, that's when I start remembering. When I was like 4, I remember little bits and pieces. But my mom came from, like, you know, a world of drugs, domestic violence, you know, a really bad background herself, and she ended up having 3 children with her stepfather, which is my father.
Oh, wow.
And she ended up marrying him. She actually married him for like a few months when she was 19. And my brother, who was my mom's first child, she had him when she was 15. He was adopted by my grandmother. But when my mom ran away with her stepfather, which is my dad, they kidnapped him. And my brother actually became one of the first milk carton kids. We were on the run from the FBI, and they finally tracked him down. Yeah, he has it. He found it. We got in contact through my book and a couple of years ago, and he found a chest of stuff after his after my grandmother's husband died, and he found the milk carton that he's on it. So it would have been like back in 1984 or something.
Yeah, I heard a documentary like podcast about the milk carton kids. So that's kind of interesting that you brought that up. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, he was actually one of the first milk carton kids, and we were living in Topeka, Kansas, hiding from the FBI. I was 2 years old, and he was 4, and he was outside of our apartment, and one of the women recognized him from the milk carton and called the police. That's how he was found.
Wow.
So, yeah, and it did work, yeah. Yeah, one of the women recognized him. So, and after he was sent back... Oh, sorry.
No. So even when they took him away and they left you with them still, regardless of...
Yeah, I mean, it was my my mom and my real dad at that time, which was her stepfather. But, yeah, they left me and my sister with them because we were their biological children. The only reason my brother was taken away is because when he was born, my grandmother had adopted him because my mom was so young. She was 15. So I don't think my grandmother really knew who kidnapped him. He was just kidnapped out of the backyard, and that's why the FBI was brought in. He was put on a milk carton. I think she suspected who maybe kidnapped him, but there was like a 2-year search for him.
Oh, that's a long time.
So anyways, after he was sent back to live with my grandmother, that's when my mom and my dad sort of split up, and my mom met my stepdad, which was where my story really started, most of the story. And so I was about 4 years old, and my mom met this miner, this gold miner from northern Arizona, and we started living with him. He was a lot older. My mom was like 22, and he was 47. So.
Oh yeah.
Wow. That's a big age gap.
Yeah. Gigantic age difference there. But yeah, so we went to live with him. We had this tiny 13-foot trailer at the mine that we started living in. And, I mean, he'd been in the Marines for 5 years when he was younger. So he was a little bit of a hard to live with. Very, he believed that, children should be seen and not heard, all of that.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Really strict disciplinarian, and he was actually a wanted child molester, fortunately. So life was really hard living with him. And then when I was about 6 years old, he started getting this idea that we should be Amish, and we started dressing in like really long dresses, veils, and everything.
And did he even know at that time what it meant to be Amish, or did he just think the idea of
like hiding,
being like perceived as being Amish means that people won't bother you or really,
So at that time, at 6 years old, I had no idea. Like, this was like so strange to me, and I didn't really find out like the real kind of the full story. I still don't know the full story, but after I was older and after I left the Amish, after I left my family, everything, I met as an adult with some of his relatives, and I started piecing together, and his ex-wife. I just met up with his ex-wife a couple of years ago. So I started piecing together this story, like why did he want to start becoming Amish? And it kind of all fell into place. And what I had come up with is that back in the late 60s, early 70s, he was wanted for child molestation in Washington State. And his wife divorced him, and he was about to be arrested. This is what his sister told me long after, when I was like 22 years old. He was about to be arrested. He was accused of molesting 2 little neighbor girls, and he disappeared. He fled to Alaska, and he started working on the herring and smelt boats, the fishing boats up there. So he sort of disappeared off of the law enforcement radar. There's no way to track him up there, really.
Yeah.
So from there, he went to Arizona, and he started working in the mines and stuff. So what I think, because me and my sister were so little, we weren't his real children, I think that he started this Amish dressing this plain lifestyle to as sort of a, what do you call it, like a way to mask what was happening, because him and my mom were severely abusive to us. Like, they beat us, they starved us, they were really, really abusive, and he was molesting us, of course. So I think that he started this plain-looking lifestyle so people wouldn't ask questions, because if they did ask too many questions, they might pull stuff up from his past.
So like hiding in plain sight type of deal.
Yeah.
And,
I think that's what it was.
And for your mom, because was your mom an abusive person before she met him, or did that just he just kind of fed her into that, making her seem like that was normal or okay?
So I can't really. I was so young. I couldn't really remember that. But after I got back in touch with my brother a couple of years ago, we were raised apart. So he found my book online. He was like searching for me, and my book popped up. So that's how he found me.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he's 2 years older than I am. He said, I asked him that, and he said yes. He said that when they were, before he was found by the FBI in Kansas, he said our dad was very abusive. Our dad was very abusive to him. My mom allowed it to happen, and he said that he has court papers of why my grandma adopted him. And one of the court papers says that when he was a little baby, that my mom let him slip under the water when she was giving him a bath. Like, really.
Jeez.
Yeah, and he sent me pictures of the papers. It cited leaving child alone, neglect, abuse. So, I think because my mom witnessed so much abuse as a kid, she just went down that path. She witnessed horrifying domestic violence, just really, really bad stuff. So,
yeah, that's what I think too, because I feel like people aren't inherently born that way, and she was just caught in that cycle of like perpetual abuse, and then that abuse, like you said, turned into like different drug abuse, and she was just around people all the time, and that just became her normal. And so that's just, and then you guys got stuck in that situation, and it's just bad all around.
Yeah, I think so. But I mean, she became worse than her own mother. I mean, she became sadistic, where she, at a very young age, from when I was 4, I remember her beating us and laughing. I mean, she enjoyed it. Like, it was very.
Yeah.
She became extremely, extremely abusive, and she enjoyed doing it. Like, it gave her some sort of stress relief. I mean, it made her happy. So it was like very, very creepy, to think about it. Because
that gives me the chills.
She laughed.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, you hear of some child abusers, but I've heard of very few where they recount that the person laughed when they were beating them.
Yeah, I think it's against all like mother nature for you would want to protect your child. You'd want to like throw your body on top of the child and say like, hit me, don't hit my daughter. And so when I'm reading the book and just hearing her laugh and like wanting Brian to do it more and stuff, I was just like so appalled of it's just against all human nature. So it's definitely had to be some sort of sickness or I would think, because it's just against even being raised like that. It happened to you and you turned complete opposite.
Yeah, well, and even taking it one step further to what Misty's saying, it's like even the normal angry person, right, would not be laughing. They would just have that anger in their face, and to be like that,
and probably feel bad later.
Yeah, it's just I don't know that's just that's just crazy. So continuing on with the story, so then he starts getting you guys to dress up in Amish clothing and starts trying to like fake live that lifestyle. So then what happens from there?
So this is when I'm like 6 or 7. There was actually a documentary that came out in the 70s about the Amish, and he watched it, and it was called The Amish, A People of Preservation. He really watched that a few times. And I don't know if you know the movie The Witness with Harrison Ford, the Amish movie. It also came out at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like right around that time, and all of these like started sparking these ideas in his head. Because he was actually born in Pennsylvania, so when he would go for family reunions, he would see Amish. He grew up somewhere around Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
He was born there. He grew up in Washington State, but he was born there. So they had a lot of family reunions back there. So he was around the Amish, and he said he would try to talk to them. And so, I mean, it was just this whole
kind of fascination. He was like kind of fascinated with it, like wanting to learn more.
He was fascinated. Yeah, he was fascinated with the idea that the man was in charge and the women had to do what they were told. That's what fascinated him the most.
Yeah, not
the actual lifestyle.
Yeah, I feel like it's like more of like a malicious intent. I can get away with this stuff here. This is perfect for me.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it was abnormal because a lot of times when people start, there's a lot of people in the 90s, the early 90s that started on this like plain, long dresses, veils. They like started these communities. But that was the strange part about us. We didn't try to join a community that looked like us. We didn't try to join the Amish.
Right.
We didn't try, to join the Mennonites or some other, offshoot that was was starting to dress like this. I mean, it would have been very easy to find a community that was trying to live like the Amish too, because there were a lot of them. For us, we remained solitary. We never tried to join anything, and that was the very strange part. Part of it was because I think my stepdad was afraid of getting arrested for child molestation, child abuse, and he was just antisocial. I mean, he was extremely antisocial. So we lived in Seattle for a while, near his relatives, but they always kept me and my sister like away from everybody. We couldn't talk. If we wanted to talk, we had to raise our hands. Me and my sister were like always isolated, even while we were living with and around the relatives. So it was just this isolative existence that we lived. So we went back and forth from Seattle to Arizona, Seattle in the summer, Arizona in the winter, until I was like 11 years old. But we lived in travel trailers most of the time. So me and my sister were like kept in the travel trailer a lot. And we were sort of homeschooled. We taught ourselves pretty much. We had brought in staff homeschooling books. We did like, a lesson here and there just in case the state ever, tried to check up on us or something. But I ended up with like a second or third grade education pretty much.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just in case the state, because my mom was collecting, government checks for us. So it was just in case the state ever, decided to check up on us. That's the only reason they had us doing the schoolwork pretty much, because, a lot of people didn't even know we existed. I mean, there was maybe a handful of people that knew we existed. Even my mom's mother, who was also abusive, bad person, she was telling my mom, you have to send the girls to school, you have to, get them out, where they have friends, because she didn't isolate my mom. She never isolated my mom. So she was, an abusive person too, but she knew it was wrong to isolate us. So we separated from her because I think she was about ready to call Child Protective Services. My brother said that my grandmother was about ready to call Child Protective Services on my mom. So we separated from her. So we separated from, my stepdad's family in Seattle. So by the time I was 10 years old, I mean, there was nobody that really knew we existed. Just some people that saw us in the trailer or outside of the trailer, but, there was nobody who cared enough to check up on us or anything. So, they could get away with pretty much whatever they wanted to do to us, and they did. And the abuse just escalated as the years went on.
And that would be even scary for you. Like, I know in your book a couple of times you're like, yeah, we could have ran at this point, but knowing how you're so many miles away from other people, and these people wouldn't have, they would have been wanting to help you, but they couldn't kind of invest in you because they didn't know you, and wasn't your mom and stepdad so good at pretending like they were the best parents in the world that that's kind of hard, right? They were pretending that they were so great and people believed it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the scary part. Even as a little kid, there's people, if you read on my book, there's people that write reviews like, oh, she could have told her aunt. She could have, told this person, that person. She could have ran. But for an abuse situation like that, my stepdad made jokes sometimes about killing us. So unless you're 100% sure that you're going to get out of there and you're not going to have to go back, you're not going to tell anybody, and you're not going to run unless you know that you're not going to have to go back. Because it's very, I remember thinking this as a kid, maybe not consciously all the way through, but I remember feeling it, because there were times I wanted to tell my stepdad's sister, what was happening. But the thought of, maybe she goes and confronts him, and then maybe we disappear before she can help us.
Right. And then it'll be 10 times worse for you when you get back to the house. Yeah.
I was never going to take that, I was never going to take that chance. If you've ever endured a severe beating, the thought of that, you're going to avoid that at all costs. So, yeah, I was never sure if the person could actually fully get us out of there.
Right.
So that's why it's like a domestic violence victim. Unless you're sure you can really escape, your husband or whoever you're with that's harming you.
Yeah.
You're not going to take that chance because
when I was reading,
scary.
For sure, and when I was reading the book, I never thought that you had a clear opportunity to get out because it seemed like they'd weasel their way into, making you just look like you're rebelling or you're just like a kid that's throwing a fit. And it was so frustrating, but I never thought that you had a clear escape path out of there. Even like thinking about running a couple miles for help, that's exhausting after you're being beat and, they're going to drag you back and everything like that. So I knew that in the book you were kind of defending yourself, like I couldn't run here. And I totally understood where you were coming from. Just because you have contact with another human doesn't mean that's the right time to tell, because it could result in something much worse.
Yeah, and on top of that, too, it's just like Brian, right? He was so good at the ever-changing variables, right? So you never knew if you were going to leave here soon or what was going to happen that day. Living in constant fear, like the variables are always changing to where you don't want to make a decision right now, because as soon as you're about to formulate this plan that took you a little bit, the variable could have changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something my mom and my stepdad were so... I don't know what you would call it. It was so strange because they were always watching us. It wasn't like they were just bad people that, flew into the spit of rage that, they would beat us because they were drunk or because, they were just mean people. They planned things. They planned it out. And that's what makes this whole story very, I don't know what you call it, creepy, because, from when we were small kids, from little kids, they conditioned us that they were always watching us. They would leave us, they would always go in the store, and they would leave us in the back of the truck, and, to say, don't talk. We weren't allowed to talk to each other. And then, we would think they were in the store, and then all of a sudden they were looking through the window at us in the back of the truck.
Jesus.
It was so scary, and they did that our entire lives. They did that. So we would quickly learn to not talk, not make any noise, and then, they wouldn't do it for a few months, and then, we would start talking like, oh, they're not coming back, and then all of a sudden they were looking at us, and they snuck up on us, like, very quiet. And when we moved to the ranch, they did the same thing. We would think, oh, they drove into town, and all of a sudden they were standing behind us. They would drive the truck, like, a half a mile down the road, around a bend in the dirt road, and then they would hike back up to the ranch and sneak up on us to see what we were doing.
That is so
So,
strange.
yeah, they did it. And then, of course, we were kids, so, we'd be talking to each other. I mean, that was like the big taboo always, our whole lives. We're not allowed to talk to each other. Or we'd be sitting down looking at a book or something, So whenever they snuck up on us, of course, we always got beat within an inch of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, that's what made it, so they could go off and do so. I mean, they could be gone for days, and we wouldn't try to leave that ranch.
And that's
because we were afraid. What if they're not gone?
Mm-hmm.
It was so scary.
They have to be living in a constant state of paranoia themselves, which is a miserable life to live. If they're leaving to then, come hike back up, it's because they're paranoid that they're going to get caught. So all these years, they're just stressed out that they're finally going to get outed. And at that same time, they're putting you guys through this miserable, unspeakable things. And they're just miserable through the whole thing. So I really don't understand it. It's hard for me to fathom that they were happy ever. It's really tough.
I never saw them happy. Yeah. Oh, I never saw them happy. They were always mad. So, yeah. Very strange.
Yeah. And so then you guys, you said you moved to the ranch, and I believe that's where you were until you were about 19, and you finally made that a good attempt to get out, and then he got scared, and that's when he sent you off. Something kind of like that is what happened?
Yeah, so when I was 10 years old, we found some people that knew how to make Amish clothes. They showed my mom how to make real Amish clothes, no longer just the veils and the dresses. Mm-hmm. So we started dressing. I mean, we really looked Amish. Like, we still drove a car, but we looked, from head to toe, we totally looked Amish. And then we moved to the ranch in northern Washington. There was nothing there when we moved there. It was just 60 acres of land.
Oh.
But, yeah. So we had to, we were sort of like homesteading, so we built this ranch up over the years. But that's where my sister and I were kept for almost pretty much the next eight and a half years. We only came off of the mountain. The ranch was 6.5 miles out of town, and the town was a town of 1,000 people. And so it was tiny. There was only a few people that ever saw us. So it was 6.5 miles out of town on a dirt road, through sagebrush, mountainous terrain. So, it would have taken a long, long time to get into town. Very long time. So, yeah, my sister and I were only pretty much allowed off of the ranch to, help bring stuff back to the ranch. Or we used to sell things along the road, like we made Amish dolls, we sold cookbooks, animals, like cows and goats and stuff. So that's pretty much the only times me and my sister were ever really allowed off of the mountain, what we called it, the ranch. So, yeah, and, there was there was 1,000 people in the town, and, most of them knew that we were up there, but, nobody ever tried to, come up and get us, or, nobody knew us enough to care, really what's going on with those two teenage Amish girls up on the mountain. There's no other Amish around. Later I found out, after like a year ago, I found out that there was a Mennonite church like 16 miles away, and they knew that we were up there. Sometimes their members, some of the women would come up, like twice a year, visit, try to visit. And I found out when I was like 16 years old that, I found out later, but when I was 16, one of the Mennonite ladies went to her minister and told the minister that she wanted to call Child Protective Services. but the minister told her not to get involved. So she told me that there were people that knew that we were being abused up there.
That's so heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah, she said that people knew, but they didn't know, I guess, what to do. So they just left us up there. And they said the scary part is, they said it looked like one day that me and my sister just disappeared. And they're like, yeah, that's the scary part, because my stepdad would tell us, he's like, we could chop your heads off and bury you under the tree. Nobody would know. And it's true. Nobody would have. If me and my sister would have been killed, nobody would have ever looked for us. Not ever. It's not like we were kidnapped victims where you have somebody searching for you over the years. Nobody was searching for us. I mean, that was a scary part. And when I was there, we knew that. I mean, we knew that, and that's what really scared us. We knew if something happened to us, nobody would ever look for us. So that was, I don't know. That's something we always thought about. But.
Yeah. And did your stepdad and mom ever, I'm surprised they didn't try to have kids together because they wanted to kind of, have all this power over you and your sister. Was that something you were worried about, is them having more kids? I know they were going to try to foster kids down the line, but was that something you and your sister ever thought about?
Well, it wasn't possible because my stepdad, with his last wife, his third wife, and he had 6 other children that he never saw. But he had a vasectomy, so it wasn't possible for them to have.
That's good. Because I was thinking they'd probably want to have all these kids and then, torture them and, I don't know.
They did want more kids. He ended up getting a reversal when I was 15 or 16. Somewhere around there. But it never worked. So, that's why they wanted to adopt.
And then, so when was the transition made, or when was the decision made to get you to move in with the full Amish community? When did that happen?
They actually wanted to, I think. Misty did, yeah.
So, when I was 18 and a half, my stepdad... I knew that once I turned 18, that they were no longer legally allowed to hold me, to beat me. I knew that 18 was an adult, so I knew that I was allowed to leave. But one of the problems was I was so brainwashed that I had to be Amish. That sort of kept me there. Me and my sister would talk about running away or, leaving, but our first concern always was we have to take a lot of clothes with us because we can't wear worldly clothes. I mean, it sounds crazy, but we were so brainwashed into believing that we had to dress Amish that sort of kept me there for another 6 months because I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just run into town, even if I made it into town. I couldn't run into town and ask the police to help me and, maybe be helped by them because I had to be Amish. I mean, that was the religious brainwashing was one of the things that really hindered us. So finally, when I was 18 and a half, it was springtime, and my stepdad was going to beat me for something really minor, for not putting a hammer away. I mean, it was ridiculous. So finally, I realized, if I don't stand up to him, I'm never getting out of here. So he told me to, bend over and touch my toes, like how they always, this thing. I mean, it was ridiculous. But so I told him no, I wouldn't do it. And then he grabbed me by the neck. He tried to break my neck. My sister jumped on his back. I mean, it was this whole thing. And I ended up running out of the house, and I tried to run down off the mountain. But I mean, it was taking forever because I couldn't take the road. I had to run through the sagebrush. I don't know if you ever tried to run through sagebrush, but it's impossible. I mean, it's so close, grown together. It takes you 10 minutes to get 50 feet. So I was trying to run through this sagebrush, and they got in the truck. They came in after me. I ended up going back to the ranch with them because, I mean, I knew there was no way for me to get into town. So I went back with them hoping that, I was really scared. I didn't know what they were going to do. And to my surprise, they sat me and my sister down, and they said, okay, we know of this Amish community. We're going to take the girls there. And my sister and I were just looking at each other what? I mean, that's not what we expected.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were expecting a beating.
Or worse. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I was sort of in a trance. I didn't know really what to expect. But I think that they had actually been waiting for me to do something like that because, I mean, I think they realized they weren't going to be able to hold us forever.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually we were going to become adults and we were not going to stay there. I mean, they told us, they said, we're going to be beating you when you're 50. You belong to us. That's what they told us that our whole life.
Jesus.
But, telling us that and actually it becoming a reality, that once you start becoming an adult, it's harder to hold you than when you're a kid, when you're a child.
Yep.
So I think they've been planning on eventually taking us to this community if and when we rebelled. And it was to prevent us from eventually maybe making it into town because, I mean, as much as they scared us, they couldn't really watch us 24/7. So, one time in the middle of the night, I might make it into town. I think that was their fear. So that's why they took us to the Amish community. They we'll take them there. They'll keep them quiet. Mm-hmm. They'll become Amish and our hands will be free of them, pretty much. That's what they thought, I think. So then they started taking us to this Amish community. My stepdad drove us over there, and we visited like a few times over the summer. It was far away, so we couldn't go very often. Like I think we went maybe 4 or 5 times. He talked to the ministers there, and they agreed to take one at a time. So they took me first. He said we'll give her a trial period. She can live with one of our families. They'll sort of adopt her, be her Amish parents. Mm-hmm. And then if that works out, then we'll take in her sister a year later. That was the plan. And I'm so surprised that this community did that because that's kind of out of the ordinary for the Amish. Mm-hmm. But it's also true that, the Amish are very related to each other. So they do have history throughout the communities of taking in teenagers. Mm-hmm. I mean, since I left, I found that there was a lot more teenagers taken into the Amish than I originally thought. And it's to kind of, enter new blood into the community. Sort of. So they took us in. I lived with this family that only had 4 children. So they sort of adopted me. And I started learning, German, Pennsylvania Dutch. I learned the language. Within like 9 months, I was sort of fluent in the language.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The little children, they helped me a lot. So, and then less than a year later, my sister came to the community. So, I mean, at first it was like, it was amazing, to be rid of, my mom and stepdad. For a while there was that fear that I might get sent back, if I didn't make it. I mean, that's one reason I learned Pennsylvania Dutch so fast. I mean, it was kind of do or die.
Yeah, survival
situation.
mode.
So, it's not that I was, brilliant. I was just fantastic learning this language. I had to learn this language. I had to fit in. Mm-hmm. And once I started fitting in, I realized, they weren't going to send me back. So my sister came to the community, and I ended up telling the people, the community, what my mom and stepdad were. My mom and stepdad are like, okay, now we're rid of them. But I ended up going back home and telling the police what they did.
Yeah.
But they were never arrested or anything. But over the years, I managed to stop them from getting foster children. So,
which is really, that's really, really good. And you had to stay super persistent with that for that to even happen. How many times would you say that you went to the police, like 3 or 4 times?
At least, yeah. And I called them on the phone, I don't know how many times. I mean, their plan was to get rid of us and to get foster kids, and that's what they thought they were doing. Mm-hmm. Over the summer, when we were going to this back and forth to this Amish community, they had me and my sister, staining the floor, getting the house looking good to get foster kids. So they thought, okay, now we're going to go get, 5, 6 foster kids. That was their idea. And we'll just start all over again.
That's
what they thought.
While they were abusing your grandma and also your mom's mentally ill stepsister Franny, that was something else you had a burden on yourself because you wanted to rescue them, and you tried to go to the police several times to help them as well, and they never found anything wrong, correct?
They didn't try. I mean, it was the religion. They didn't try. The police didn't try to find anything. When my sister came to the Amish community, I went back to the police. I sent the police up there, and the police came back like a couple hours later, and like, well, we didn't see anything out of place. Your mom invited us in. We had coffee. I was like, did you pick up, the hem of my aunt's dress? I mean, she has bruises from head to foot, but she was also clothed from head to foot. And the police said, no, we can't do that because that would be against their religion.
That's
and I was like, well, can you send a woman up there? I was like, they're being so badly abused. You have no idea. I mean, they're being tortured every single day, like literally beaten with slice waters. They're just horribly abused.
And Franny only had, it said like the mental capacity, or what's the word for that, Vic? Like when you, of a 4-year-old. So how would you say that?
Yeah, of a 3-year-old.
Of a 3-year-old. So that's so devastating. She wouldn't even
schizophrenic.
Understand the concept of what's happening to her.
Yeah. That's sad.
Oh, it breaks my heart.
I asked the police to send a woman up there. I was like, can you at least send a woman up there? Some kind of woman that has the authority to do this. And they're like, the closest woman, they said, EMT we could get it was 40 miles away. We lived in northern Washington, in the middle of nowhere. I was like, okay, can you call her? That's what I was like, can you send her up there? They're like, no, we don't want to do that. I mean, going to the police was like pulling teeth. I mean, they would not. And I told them, I said, if you pick up her dress, if you roll up the sleeve of her dress or lift up her dress, you will see so many bruises. And they wouldn't do it. And then that's another reason why I wrote the book, because, I mean, the police need to know when, people come out of strict religions, they're risking a lot to go to the police. And, the police need to take this seriously.
Right, yeah.
They wouldn't do it.
Yeah, because for you being Amish at the time, going to the police, that was something that was very, like
taboo.
Yeah, so they should have realized if she's coming here, she's not just rebelling, like what they were saying, you're just rebelling on them. No, you're trying to,
save somebody.
Save someone's life.
Yeah, I mean, but they would. I think the police didn't want to get involved in they looked at it like some religious dispute. They just didn't want to get involved. They kept saying, we have to respect their freedom of religion. Sometimes freedom can trap people. I mean, it's not freedom from somebody can trap another person. There's a delicate balance there of freedom of religion and that religion's freedom to abuse people. And I tried to explain that to the police, but they just didn't.
Yeah.
They literally brushed me off. They said, well, fill out this report and send it back to us. And, yeah.
Well, I'm just really happy you got them to not get foster children.
Yeah, you saved some kids' lives. Sure.
And so then you, eventually you have enough at the Amish, right? You realize this is not something that I want to stay in.
Well, I was in the Amish community for 3.5 years. And then, the family that I was assigned to. So my sister, she was assigned to a family. She ended up moving away to another state, to another community. She started dating and everything. But the family that I lived with, there was a lot of domestic problems. I mean, the husband was very mean to his wife, emotionally. He always berated her, got on her for not working enough. I mean, Amish women are really, really overworked. But there was just a lot of problems. So the wife, she was abused. So she took it out on me because, I was this 19, 20-year-old girl in their house. And her husband liked to talk to me. I mean, there was nothing physical going on. But she didn't like that he gave me so much attention. Which I didn't ask for, But
at times you tried to ignore him because you didn't want to cause that rift between you and the wife. You wanted to be friends to make your life easier.
Yeah. I think he did it as another form of trying to hurt his wife.
Yeah.
I think that's why he did it.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, I just could not take her. I mean, she ridiculed me for everything all the time. So the bishop's family lived a little ways away, just like a 3-minute walk away, their farmhouse. And the bishop's wife was my friend. She had seizures. So I was over there helping her a lot. And eventually they invited me to come stay with them to get out of that, bad situation I was in. They're like, just come stay with us, be our maid. They had 7 children. So, I mean, the family that I was living with, they didn't really like the idea. But, I just picked up my stuff. I didn't have very much stuff, and I just took it. The children helped me take it over to the bishop's house. So I moved in with them. But right when I was, I remember I was coming out of my bedroom that I shared with the girls, and I had my arms full of my dresses, and the Amish family that I was living with, the Amish man that was now my Amish dad, he stopped me at the doorway, and he's like, you just have to know that the Amish is the bishop is a very bad man. I was like, what? That's what he told me that. And I remember just sort of freezing for a minute because I knew that there was whispers that the bishop was took advantage of the girls, of maids, and he acted, inappropriately. But I was desperate to get out of this situation that I was in, so
you didn't want to believe it.
I knew in my gut. I knew I shouldn't have moved in there. I knew there was something wrong, and but I was just desperate to get out of this situation, and the bishop took advantage of it. He knew that, so I think he was sort of waiting for his moment, and he found it, and that's when he invited me into their house. Because I found out later that at the beginning, he was the one. He wanted me to move in with him. That's why they agreed to take me in. I was going to move into their house. That was the original plan. I found out later. The original plan when we were going over there for the summer was the bishop was going to have me move into his house and be the maid, take care of the children, help his wife. That was the original plan, but the church voted against it because he had already been shunned for molesting his oldest daughter at that time.
Jeez.
And I was 18 years old when I moved there, but I looked 12.
Yeah.
I mean, I think people were afraid of an outsider moving into his house and maybe getting molested and maybe saying something. I think that was the reason they voted against it. But that was, I said it was very unusual for them to take in, teenagers, outside people. But I think that was why. That was the bishop's plan.
Yeah.
So 3.5 years later, I think he saw his
window of opportunity.
Yeah, his window of opportunity, and that's when, I moved into their house. In my subconscious, I knew it was a bad idea. I could just feel something was very off with it. And when my Amish dad stopped me at the door, and he's like, he's a very bad man. Amish rules prevented him from telling me that the Amish bishop was a child molester. Because he wasn't allowed to talk about that. After somebody's forgiven, you're not allowed to talk about it. So I think in his own way, he was trying to warn me, but he wasn't allowed to say anything specific. So all he told me was he's a very bad man. And, but, I didn't listen because, I thought, he just wants to keep me here.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving in with the Amish bishop. And I think the next day he started molesting me. But, it started out really slow. I tried to ignore it, just him filling me up and stuff. At first he pretended it was an accident, he came up behind me and, stumbled and, started filling me up and stuff. So that's sort of how it started. And then, I lived there for 6 months. It started progressing worse and worse and worse. And, but, now I was trapped again, I was a unmarried girl. I knew that if I went and told anybody that, they were going to say I caused this problem, it was my fault because over the years since I had lived there, I've been accused of, maybe pinning my dress too tight, not wearing my head covering far enough forward, those things, that sort of, it wasn't true. These were lies started by the lady that, the family that I lived with. The lady was jealous of me, so she would tell, the deacon this, the minister this, and then these rumors start flying. And in a community like that, once rumors start flying, I mean, once your reputation is ruined in a community like that, you kind of never get it back. So, and some of these rumors are actually started by the bishop himself. When we started coming to the community, he actually started some of these rumors that me and my sister were staring at the boys, that we were just after boys. He started them. He, planted the seed.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was just, all sort of planned out. And so I was trapped. I couldn't say anything because I knew that if I said something, if I asked for help, they would turn it around and it would be my fault. So I was just quiet for 6 months. And then eventually I started getting suspicious that he was molesting his children. I wasn't a church member when he was shunned, so there was no way for me to know that he was a child molester because, when you're Amish, after you've been shunned and taken back into the church, it's usually for 6 weeks. The church members are not allowed to talk of your sin ever again. So, or that means they have not forgiven you. So there was no way for me to know that he had already been found out by the entire church as a child molester. So, but I started picking up on things. The oldest daughter, she was 12 years old, and she just did some things that I recognized a molested child would do. She was very fascinated with animals mating and stuff like that. And that's a big red flag for, molested children. And I knew that. I'd actually read it somewhere in a paper or something. I couldn't remember, but that was one of the first clues that I picked up on. I was looking at her, and her mom was scolding her for pointing out to the other children. And I was like, I wonder. And then I started, picking up on other things. And then, eventually, after 6 months, the bishop came into my room and attacked me. I have a lot of blackouts in there because it was a pretty brutal attack. But after I got away from him, and I ran to a lady that lived on our property. She ran a horse rescue. She was sort of living the plain lifestyle a little bit. But I ran to her for help, and she sort of convinced me to go to the police. And the real reason I went to the police was because I was afraid he was molesting his children. I was I had been that child, and nobody had helped me, and I was now I'm in that position, and I cannot be that person that doesn't help the children. So that's the real thing that motivated me to go to the police. So this lady ended up driving me to the police station, and once again I'm sitting there with the police, and they do not want to do anything. And it's just all over again, this nightmare of trying to convince the police that I need help, that these children are in danger. And they're so he's Amish. It's it's your word against his. I was question the children. I was I'm very afraid that he's molesting his children. And, you could just see this resistance. They did not want to listen to me. They did not want to have to do anything about it. Because he was Amish. That's the scary part.
Yeah.
We've never heard of this kind of thing with the Amish before. But I stayed in the police station I think I was there for a couple hours. And they're okay, we'll send a car out. So the lady drives me back to, I went back to the property with her because I had nowhere else to go. And right after we come back to the property, I stayed in the shed where she was living with her. I didn't go back to the main house.
Yeah.
But the police car came out, and I was okay, good. They're going to at least go in there. They're going to talk to the children. Something's going to come out. And they went in there. The bishop came out of the house. He shook their hand. It was very nice, invited them in. They stayed in there for 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And when they came out of the farmhouse, they were waving at the bishop. They were waving at the bishop, at the children.
Oh,
they were waving goodbye. Like they had this very friendly, happy time in there. And I was standing outside of the shed. This lady had like 3 wolves. I was just like petting the wolves. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, okay. I mean, it happened again. I mean, they're not going to do anything. So I stayed on the property, the bishop's property, for another month, but with this lady. And I had plans that I was going to go to Seattle to live with my stepdad's sister. She agreed to take me in. So eventually I went to Seattle, and I called a detective from Seattle. I started, getting into, a new life, and I started studying for my GED. I left the Amish. I completely left the Amish at that point. But I called the detective. I kept calling the detective on this case because I was like, I cannot be the person that leaves children with a, sexual predator. Right? I could not be that person. So I kept bugging this detective, and I think it was like a week after, maybe 2 weeks after I got to Seattle, some time frame after I got to Seattle, I called, and he's like, we went out to the property. The bishop's gone. The whole family's gone. And they found out that the bishop had rented a van. He had taken the money from the church purse, the money they collect for the, in case somebody's barn burns down or something. He had taken that money, and he'd rented a van. He had put his whole family in there, and he hired this van driver to drive them into Canada. So he pretty much, the detective told me, he's like, we started thinking back, about the time. One of the officers started thinking back from the time they were at the farmhouse, and he started thinking about it, and he noticed that the wife looked a little bit off. So he's like, maybe there's more to the story than we thought. Some strange reason, the bishop realized that they were going to come out and arrest him. Yeah. And I have a strange feeling. I really think that somebody tipped him off somehow. Yeah. Because they were getting ready to go out and finally arrest him, and they disappeared into Canada, which is strange.
Right. That is strange. And you thought that he was maybe poisoning his wife as well, right? Or
yes.
Like giving her something so she would have her seizures more frequently?
Yeah, she had a lot of seizures, but when I moved in with them, the seizures increased. Like, it was like 2-3 times a week, and they were, they made her really tired. And one time I was sitting at the breakfast, right before I called the police, I was sitting at the breakfast table with him and the children, and he made this really creepy comment. He said that, if Mom dies, Misty will make a nice mother for you. He was telling this to the children.
Right, and their mom was very much still alive and could be fine.
She was alive.
Yeah.
She was in the bedroom. She just had a seizure. And he said this to the children, like he was trying to plant this seed that Mom's going to die and this is your new mom. That's what I can still feel that feeling. I don't know how to explain it. I can still feel the feeling that I felt when he said that. And it was just like this piece of lead dropping to the bottom of my stomach. I mean, it was so, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I pushed the door open. Like, he would always supposed to give her medicine and stuff, and I just had this very off feeling. I pushed the door open, and he was giving her water, and it was like very suspicious looking. But, some people can say, oh, he's just giving her medicine mixed in water. But when I pushed the door open and he saw me, and the look on his face was so guilty. I mean, I just knew I believe he was giving her something. And I got back in contact with his children a couple years ago, and I asked the oldest daughter, about that. I was like, do you think that your dad was giving your mom something? She's like, I don't know. I just know that Mom was having so many seizures at that time.
But
I think after maybe after they went to Canada, I think maybe he might have stopped because he needed her at that time. But I really think at that time he was giving her something that would cause those seizures, and perhaps kill her. Otherwise, why would he make that comment?
Right? Yeah. No. Absolutely. And why would she not be having as many seizures now. And so when you got in contact with the kids, their family is still like together, and are they still Amish? And
no, so I got so I went to Seattle, and I obviously became, in the modern world, and then 7 years after I left the Amish, I started writing my memoir. Took me a couple years, and I published and everything. And then I was in nursing school, so like maybe a year and a half, 2 years after I wrote my memoir, I got this message on Goodreads, and it was like, we know the bishop's children. We just want to let you know that they're safe. I thought it was some sort of joke. I was scared at first. I was like, maybe it's a joke. Maybe it is the bishop himself. I didn't want to respond.
Right.
But then I was curious. So I ended up, do you have an email you can give to the oldest daughter so she can email you? And I ended up giving them my email, and she did. The oldest daughter emailed me, and at that point, they were prosecuting their dad for child molestation. They were in the process. So she told me that, they ran to Canada, but a year and a half after they got to Canada, their dad tried to get them all full Canadian citizenship. He did not want to come back to the United States. He wanted everybody to have full Canadian citizenship. And the Canadian authorities, or whoever that is that you talk to about citizenship, they realized that they were in the country illegally. So they said, we'll give you the option to leave Canada or we will deport you. That's what they told them. So they were only in Canada for a year and a half, and then they came back to the United States. But, we had no way of knowing that. I didn't know that they were back in the United States. I thought they were in Canada and they were just gone forever.
Yeah.
But, that's very suspicious. Why would he want to get everybody Canadian citizenship?
Right.
The detective actually told me, he's like, I think there's something far worse in this guy's past, but because he's Amish, we'll never know what it is.
Yeah.
And I think so, too. So, so they came back to the United States, and then they were living, like, on the outskirts of different Amish communities and stuff. And then finally, the three oldest daughters, they did sort of like the same thing I did. They asked a neighbor lady for help. The neighbor lady called in Child Protective Services, and Child Protective Services called in the police. And there was a detective called in at the time, and she was actually reading my book, which is very crazy.
Ironic.
He's like,
Wow.
Yeah, he was reading my book. He told the social worker, he's like, this sounds very much like the story that I'm reading. He's like, these people ran to Canada, and he was like, I was interviewing one of the girls, and she's like, we lived in Canada for a year and a half. And so he ended up giving the book to the social worker, and the social worker gave the book to the girls, and like, of course they recognize the story. They're like, oh, yes, that's Emma, that's my Amish name. They recognized me right away, so that's how they got in contact with me, through Goodreads. They didn't know how else to contact me, so they got in contact with me through Goodreads, and the oldest daughter told me that the three oldest girls, they asked this lady for help because their stepdad the bishop had been molesting them their whole lives, pretty much. It started with the oldest daughter when she was 4, and then just sort of progressed down the line of children, boys and girls. She said that he was molesting them, when I was in the house. When I lived with them.
Wow.
Yeah, she said that pretty much the things that he was doing to me, he was doing to them. It was just, it seemed like he would have been busy his whole time just going around molesting everybody.
Yeah.
There was so, yeah. So, I was right about it. And so at that time, they had a brand new baby sister. She was 1 year old. And they decided to go and ask for help because they wanted to save this, little baby sister from what they had been through. So that's what motivated them to go for help. So the bishop was arrested, and actually at the time when the social worker showed them my book actually helped put him in prison because at that time the oldest daughter, she was getting a lot of mail from from Amish relatives telling her, she was a bad girl, she should go back to her parents and be a good daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And she was sort of deciding to not press charges. She's like, I can't do this. And then when she got my book and she saw what had happened to me,
mm-hmm.
she realized, her dad was this really bad guy. And
mm-hmm.
that gave her the fortitude. She went to court. She pressed charges. And, her dad was sentenced to 10 years in prison for child molestation.
Wow.
That is...
And the mother lost all of her parental rights because this whole time, she knew.
Oh, she did
that
know.
He was molested. Yeah, no, she knew from... She's the one, the mother is the one that reported the bishop to the ministers when the daughter was 4 years old.
Oh.
That's when he was shunned. Yeah. It was 3 years before I came to the community. She went to the ministers and told them that that her husband was molesting their oldest daughter,
my
who was 4 years old. So they shunned the bishop for 6 weeks. That's the average. I mean, that's just insane.
Wow.
He got shunned for 6 weeks. The children were not taken out of the home. He was just shunned. In the Amish, when you get shunned for child molestation, nobody comes in and asks the child, "Are you okay? Do you feel safe?" I mean, nobody is concerned with the child.
Basically, they just get like a little break, and then they go right back to their bad habits.
Yeah, the only thing that happens is you are shunned by the church. So that means after church, you can't sit and eat with the other members. You have
mm-hmm.
to sit off to the side during church. You can't go to social events. But you live in your same house. Mm-hmm. Nobody takes your children away. I mean, you just continue your...
Wow, yep.
You basically get a break from church and social events for 6 weeks, pretty much.
Jeez,
but nobody comes in and, questions the child. Are you hurt? Are you scared? Nobody's concerned with the victim. If it's a child or a young woman, the victim is not the concern. It's a small punishment for the sin, and then everybody goes back to normal life. So that's what happened with the bishop. The bishop's wife went to the ministers. They shunned him for 6 weeks, and life just continued as normal. But the bishop's wife herself was child sexual abuse victim. She and all of her sisters had been molested by her dad, who was a deacon in the church.
Jeez.
Her mother had reported their dad to the church 5 times, and then eventually stopped. Because it didn't, do any good. So,
wow.
The church is taught to report everything to the ministers. Mm-hmm. But the ministers, if that's going to be the case, the ministers need to be held responsible for reporting it to the police.
Yeah.
And they can't just keep doing this cycle of what they're doing, of just shunning people for 6 weeks. And in the last year, I've come into contact with so many sexual abuse survivors who have left the Amish and Mennonites who say that they were treated the same way. Wow. They were made to feel guilty for what happened to them. And their perpetrator, if he was punished at all, he was punished for a few weeks, just shunned.
Wow.
There's I've started a closed Facebook group for us. There's so many of us.
Yeah, that's crazy that you were able to get out and share your story, and now other people are getting out and sharing their story and making it a more safe environment for everybody that's doing that and not feeling that they're stuck in those situations forever, right? And so that's, a great testament to what you're doing in that advocacy.
Recently, I helped in a real live case. I guess somehow my name is circulating among the Amish, and I had this ex-Amish lady contact me. She just left. I'd known her for a little while. She just left the Amish like 6 months before she contacted me to help in this case. That she knew of this Amish rapist. He was single. He was in his 50s, and she said that her community knew that he had raped over 12 boys.
Oh, wow.
And they kept sending him, she was more liberal Amish. So the liberal Amish, they will send rapists to like these Amish-run counseling centers, for a few months to get rehabilitated. So they kept sending him to these Amish and Mennonite-run rehabilitation places to get cured, what they say. And she said that there was at least 12 known victims. He had just raped another boy, and they were sending him to this rehabilitation place again for I don't know what, maybe the 10th time. And she's like, we need to do something. She's like, there's 12 known victims, and there's probably maybe 3 or 4 times that many. So she told me, she's like, I've called the sheriff, I've called the police, I've called Child Protective Service. Nobody will do anything. She's like, can you help me? And I was so mad. So I knew this reporter. I called this reporter. I was like, there's got to be something we can do. What can we do to stop this guy? So this reporter said, hold on, I might know somebody that can help you. They put me in contact with this ex-Mennonite lady who knew a detective that had worked on a case in the Mennonites like this. So it was like this whole thing that took like a month of going back and forth of her helping me. And we were going back and forth with the sheriff. They're like, oh, no, it's not our county. It's that county. It's not our, they just were bouncing us around. But finally, Child Protective Services were called out. They called the police, and he was arrested.
That's amazing. That's really, really amazing. And it's just like that, cases like that somebody may never have spoken out had you not spoken out. And so that's truly, like, I really commend you for that. And we also have questions here from
so our listeners, I told them about like a month and a half ago that we were going to have you on and to read your book. And so they did, and they came up with some questions. And if you can't answer some of them, just say you can't answer them. This was just some things they were curious about after reading. So this one's from Amanda. Let's see. Whatever happened to your hope chest and the things inside of it?
Oh, the hope chest. I left it in Seattle.
Did you?
I took it with me to Seattle, and it was put in my my step-aunt had a furniture store. My step-aunt was a very amazing person. But I ended up putting the hope chest, I mean, it was pretty big, in the basement of her furniture store, and I think it's still there.
Okay.
Or, I don't know. I didn't want I didn't want to take any of my Amish stuff. At that point, I didn't want anything to do with my Amish stuff, my Amish clothes. Now I wish I had it, but at that point, just the sight of it made me want to throw up. So I just left it there.
And then Amber would like to know, do you talk to any of your family, or do you keep your distance?
I write to my sister maybe a couple times a year, but that's the only person, except for my brother that that just found me. I mean, we text a lot. But yeah, I hear from my sister a couple times a year. She has 3 children now. She's married. She's still Amish. But they're very general letters. I mean, the letters are very, nothing deep or anything like that.
And then she's allowed to write you back?
Yeah, she does write a few times a year. But
okay. She just has to be very surface level. She can't tell you any details of anything.
No, it's just very general, like a letter she would send to any other Amish person. Today I quilted, tomorrow I'm canning, that kind of letter.
Okay. Okay, Megan said, you've already accomplished so much in your life so far. What are some of your future plans or goals? Well, you just finished nursing school, so I would say that's a good goal that you've accomplished.
Yeah. So right now I'm working on the TV series. We're just like in the funding stage, and then hopefully we start production like the end of January, between January and March. So that's going to be a 2-season series, and then I have somebody interested in making a documentary about me. And then these people that these other ex-Amish, ex-Mennonite sexual abuse victims, I want to make a documentary with them at some point. And I would like to actually, I'm a nurse now, but I would actually like to continue with, some sort of TV channel, doing documentaries and interviews with child abuse victims, domestic violence victims, and just really raise a lot of awareness. At the end of each episode of the TV series we're doing, I'm going to come on the screen for a minute, and I'm going to give out the child abuse hotline, sexual abuse hotline, domestic violence hotline. So I really want to raise awareness and bring this out into everyday talking points, because that's one reason child abuse, sexual abuse has been allowed to go rampant, because people don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And once you really start talking about it, I think it'll stamp it out a little bit. At least I hope. That's what I want to do. I want to focus on.
Great. And then the last question, which I think everybody has, this is from Deborah. How are we as non-Amish able to reach out and help the abused Amish?
Yeah, I get that question a lot. I get a lot of emails with people asking that question. That's a very, very hard question to answer, because the Amish are so insular, and, they don't listen to people from the outside. So the only advice I can give is that become friends with them. When I ran to the lady that lived in the shop on the property, I ran to her because she was my friend. She was an outsider, and I thought she could help me. And once you're ready for help, you're not going to go to somebody inside the church, because they're not going to help you. Right. They're going to report you to the bishop, to the ministers. So if you make friends with them and they finally make that decision that they are ready for help, because, you can't help them until they're ready for help. There's no way you can help them. They'll shut you out. So if you can become friends with the community, be known as a helpful, nice person, if somebody in the community is ready for help, then they might show up on your doorstep. That's usually what happens.
Okay.
That's how people get out of the Amish, usually.
Yeah. And my personal question, the last question is, I felt like, so Simba was he a dog or a wolf?
He was half St. Bernard, half wolf.
Okay. I always wanted you to adopt him because he loved you so much. Have you seen him at all since leaving there?
Yeah. I was not in the position to have a dog. It was moving and everything. But yeah, Simba helped me get through a lot of hard times. I don't know, for some reason he adopted me.
Yeah, he put his print on you.
He was huge, he almost came up to my waist, he was gigantic. He was orange. He was so sweet. But yeah, for some reason, the lady that owned him, it was a lady in the shop. She's like, I can't believe it. He's adopted you. She's like, if you had a house, I would give him to you, because he's literally adopted you. But he helped me through a lot. I would hug him when I was sad. I was always going down there playing with him, and if I was down there with him and the bishop walked by, he would just go crazy.
Yeah.
He wanted to rip out the bishop's jugular. He was very smart. Dogs know those things. So,
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he kind of
he's in doggy heaven now, but...
Oh, is he? Yeah, I just loved how he was so protective of you, and he knew bad people when he saw them, and how when you stayed in the trailer with him, you knew it was hard for you to sleep, but at least you knew you had him. He would pretty much get anybody that was going to try to hurt you. So that was a really cool connection in the book too.
Yeah.
Well,
it was sweet.
Well, thank you so much, Misty. We really, really appreciate you coming on our show and sharing your story with us. And for anybody that's listening and wants to read the book, it's Tears of the Silenced by Misty Griffin. You can get it on Amazon, Audible, Barnes & Noble, any place that you get your reading material from. It'll be available there. And yeah, we look forward to, we wish you the best of luck on the TV series, and we look forward to watching it when it comes out. And just again, thank you so much for opening up with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, and you have a great day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Yep. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Well, thank you guys so much. We hope you enjoyed the conversation, and just keep that in your thoughts. If you see a suspicious situation like that, or if somebody's reaching out to you for help,
or you see something that you feel in your gut might not be right,
maybe question it a little bit and investigate some more and see if you can help that person. But this is just one of the many stories out there of people that have been abused, and luckily she was able to get out. But we hope you guys enjoyed the show. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. You can listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify. You can always listen at www.cococalientepodcast.com and follow us on Instagram at Coco Caliente Podcast and on Twitter at Coco Caliente Pod. Thank you.
Thanks.